right. Live. I'm so excited because I've invited my friend Ray Higdon to be on my podcast today. Really value Ray and the role that he's had in my life, even though he's not in it every single day, although I see him on social media. He had a really big impact on me. And I started working with Ray back in I think late 2018 or 2019. Someone's like, have you seen this like Ray Higdon guy? And I was like, who? And he's like, this Ray Higdon guy. And I go on YouTube and Google a couple of videos. And I'm like, oh,
were they disgusted?
No, they were just like, this guy, like he's training network marketers. He's training people because I was looking for leadership in my company and I didn't have it. There wasn't a leadership track and I had made a lot of money, but I didn't know how to sustain that without burning out. Like I was the hustler. Sure. I was the driving force. And I was like, I didn't understand duplication. I didn't understand communication or culture or leadership. And you taught me all of those things. Like, I'm just so grateful. And it's really cool because the first event I went to and spoke at actually was Teal, which was Top Earner Academy Live. That's right. And, that was way back in the day. And I know you did events way before then, but this was kind of like when people were starting to recognize rank makers and this was becoming your brand. Yeah. And the reason that I wanted to have you on today is because I've seen a massive transition for you and transformation for you over the last few years. I'm so proud of you. And I've seen you evolve this brand wholeheartedly into who you are and who Jess is and how you guys are meant to serve. And so I'd really like to just kind of talk a little bit about that. And over the last couple of years, what are these things that have come to you that you're like, hey, I know that I'm meant to help people in a certain way, but I'm not serving them here. I need to serve them here. And so can we talk about that gap and like what you've done in the space between?
Yeah. Thanks. It's interesting. So if I look back, many years ago, everyone would ask, so let's say probably 10 years ago, maybe. So 10 years ago, a lot of people were asking me, hey man, how are you so consistent? Like, what's your routine? What's this and that? And so I would, teach them, here's what I do. Here's how I do it, go forth and prosper. And they wouldn't do it. And just very few people, I would teach, we have a book that I co-authored called Go for No for Network Marketing, right? And so I would tell people, I went for 20 no's a day. This is what I did, worked on my marketing, got my marketing better. And no one would do it, like literally no one. And I think I've had 3 people come to me and say they actually got 20 no's a day for 6 months. All 3 are $1 million a year earners. And they weren't, now they are. And so I'm sure it's just a coincidence. And so once I realized, I'm like, why is no one doing this? Like I'm teaching what I'm doing, they're not doing it. Why is no one doing this? And I realized, I'm like, well, there must be some different way that I associate it. So I've always been seeking like how to be the very best teacher possible, how to really give people what they truly need. What they think they want and what they truly need are 2 different things. Yes. And so I learned that, oh, you know what? Maybe it's because I have a vision of who I want to be, of how I want to impact people, of what I want to. So I'm like, vision, that's it. So I started teaching vision. And that was probably 2013, 2014, maybe 2015 some. And I would say maybe 5 to 10% of people started being more consistent. It was great, right? It was a great improvement. And but it's still a very small percentage. And I'm like, man, what else? And so I realized that you're one of 2 camps. You're either the hustler, the grinder, the workaholic. I do it all and let's go, and you love all those memes and everything, if it's going to be, it's up to me and all those things. And, that's great, but you never fill what you're trying to fill. Yeah. And then there's the other side, the 95% that aren't consistent and they don't know why. And the reason they're not consistent, I've figured out, is because they've drawn the wrong conclusion to success based on an observation they made as a kid. Yeah. So it could be, there are many scenarios here. There's actually not that many. There's maybe half a dozen. One scenario, if your parents were successful and they ignored you, you will deny success. You'll self-sabotage in your subconscious because you don't want to ignore other people or ignore your own kids. If your parents were successful and they lost it, then a lot of times you'll draw the conclusion that, oh, if I make a lot of money, I'll just lose it. So you'll sabotage ever making a lot of money, right? And there's many, many others. And so I figured that out. That really increased. I would say, if I'm, and this is just guessing from observation, but I would say maybe that bumped it up to 30–40%. But there was still something missing. And in 2019, we crushed it in sales. We just crushed it. We crushed it in sales. Investments were crushing. I speak on Grant Cardone's stage, Russell Brunson's stage, all these different stages, and achieve all the different things that I've been, but nothing in me changed. And I still knew something was missing, and I didn't understand why. And so for the next really 3 years, I go on this kind of discovery mission of, why do I have social anxiety? Why do I not want to, hang out with people? Why am I so suspicious of people? Why do I constantly in every relationship feel like I'm not important? Why are all these things there? And so I went through all kinds of different therapy. I went through all kinds of, hypnosis, and just did a lot of stuff to try to figure this out. I did 2 years, 1 to 3 hours a day of meditation. So I tamed the body, I mastered calming the mind, all these different things. And those things really helped, but there was still something missing. And, 7 months ago, I gave my life to Christ. And it's, I don't know if you want to hear that story, but
I do want to hear that story. I think it's important for people to hear, because they knew you as Ray, the network marketing trainer, and the business guy, and the guy, and then that has been a big shift to that.
Yeah.
So I do want to hear that story.
So here I am seeking. And so like, if you do proper meditation, and I would do 90-minute meditations, I do 4-hour meditations. If you do proper meditation, you go into it with an intention, right? What's my intention? And 9 times out of 10, my intention was to get closer to God. But I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't grow up with the Bible. I didn't grow up in church. I didn't know one verse. I mean, I'd seen on sports, John 3:16 in the crowd, but I didn't actually know what it meant. Didn't know the verse, didn't understand it. I think I may have looked it up once, and I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. I just wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
And so my wife, she speaks at this event in Nashville. Were you there?
I wasn't. I couldn't be there because I was getting my residency in Mexico. I was supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm. So I forget exactly when that was, but she speaks in Nashville.
September.
Okay. She comes home and she goes, hey, I met a guy. You need to talk to him. And I'm like, okay. And so we get on Zoom, and first thing out of his mouth, he says, I see a big vision for you and God. And I'm like, right. What are you selling here, right? Like, Christian mastermind, right. Christianpreneur, right? What are you going to hit me with here, Christian guy?
Sure.
And because again, didn't grow up in the church, didn't really know what he meant. Like, this was, none of it made sense. But we talked for probably 90 minutes, and literally nothing made sense, but it felt true. And I just knew in my heart what he's saying is true. And he's telling about how I'll be saving all these, I won't share all the things he shared, but he shared a lot of stuff, and he has a kind of a gift, I think. And so I listened to that, and then my thought is, why would Jess have me talk to him? Because it's not like she's religious. I mean, she did grow up in the church, but she's more new age, right? Like I was.
Sure.
And so I asked her, I say, hey, why don't you have me talk to him? That was an interesting conversation. And she goes, oh, he had issues with his dad too, and he sold a business. I thought you guys would hit it off. I'm like, okay, well, here's what we talked about. Really? Like that's not what she expected. Wow. The next night, so I don't know what to do with this. Like he lays all this on me, and I'm like, I really don't know what to do with it. And this was 2 weeks before our annual event. So it's not like I can just, like we're going this direction. Like, I don't know what to do. And so the next night we're just at a networking function, and I see a guy that I'd met before, but I didn't know what he did. And I didn't know his name, didn't know what he did, but I knew I'd seen him before, kind of around town here in Naples, Florida. And so I just kind of walk up, hey, and he sees me and he goes, I see a big vision for you and God. I'm like, what is happening? He said, I mean, they don't know each other. One's on one coast, one's on the other coast.
Wild.
He said verbatim, what the other guy said. And so he goes, we need to pray. And I'm like, okay. And so he's this big old monster of a dude. He's like, I don't know, 6'2", 6'4", something like that. And so he goes over me and he's holding on to me and he's praying in the middle of this networking meeting. I'm bawling my eyes out. I don't know what is happening. And I kind of open my eye and people are walking this way, that way, this way, that way. Literally like
you're in a bubble.
I'm like, and no one notices. No one says, you okay, bro? Like no one, like I come up and I expect everyone to be like, what's happening? No one noticed a thing. Now that is just, I mean, that's God. Because how the heck, if you were at any function ever and you see two dudes and one's bawling his eyes out, you'd
be like, are you okay?
You're going to lean in, you're going to ask a question, you're at least going to look, right? Maybe you're sly about it. You may even film it, right? And be like, what's going on here? But you're not going to ignore it. No one said a word. And he told me, he goes, you're going to face a fork in the road. And he said, ask God, lean on God, trust God. And he's a pastor, by the way. Didn't know that. And so now I really don't know what to do because we got our event. I'm feeling very called to do something, but I don't know what. And I shelf it. I'm like, you know what? I just can't. I can't, with the annual event, that's a very large cost to us. And we got to be focused. We got to, create a revenue. We got to impact some lives and create a revenue, et cetera. And so, we do the event and then I come back. And so I come back to that original guy and, he comes over, gives us some blessings, baptizes us. And nothing crazy happened. I didn't float into the air or speak tongues or anything like that. But there's a couple things that happened, but the one thing that happened is the next morning I wake up and I'm not the same person. I remember as soon as I got up, I felt different and I roll out of bed, I'm looking at my hands and if you meditate for 2 years, 1 to 3 hours a day, you really get to know your body.
Yeah.
This is not my body. Like I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the flowers outside. I look at the sunrise. Everything is more brilliant and everything is different. Like I just have there's just something different. And I have this overwhelming feeling that I need to just turn my life over to God. And so I get out on my hands and knees. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to pray. No one taught me. And so I got down on my hands and knees. I'm like, God, I don't know what I'm doing, but I give everything to you. I give my life to you. If you want me to shut the business down, if you want me on the road with a robe, I'll do it. Like I'm just committing, to God. And which looking back is kind of funny because it's like, that's kind of pretending like God isn't timeless and didn't know the exact moment I would give my life to him, right? That's putting him in a box like us. So lean not on your own understanding. And so I get the overwhelming feeling that I need to go live. And I'm like, really? I've been at this for, 18 years in some form or fashion. And I've literally never said the word God, or if I did say it, possibly it was God or universe, right? They were interchangeable.
Right. Just to be safe, right? Just to be safe.
Be safe, better cover my bases. And so I go live and it's a mess. I'm bawling. I don't know what I'm saying, but I'm just following what I believe is obedience and just sharing what's going on, where I'm at. And I've just tried to be obedient ever since. So it's really, you're giving me too much credit as saying, Ray chose to change his brand. I didn't choose to do anything. I'm just listening. I'm obedient. He's had to correct me several times. I didn't know, am I supposed to go into ministry? And he's reminded me, I wouldn't have you go through all these business pillars and connect with all these business entrepreneurs and people, and then just have you go in a totally new category. Like, come on, buddy. And so I am meant to impact the business pillar and help them actually find what they're chasing. And so now it's the full. So if you look at, I taught, daily routine, then I taught vision, then I taught overcoming sabotage. And now I realize that all of these things were leading me to understand the highest acceptance, which is acceptance of your love from God. Right. So there we are.
Wow. Thank you for taking the time to unpack that and share it with people, because I think, it's religion is an interesting thing because people have their own viewpoints or their own experiences. I grew up Catholic and had my, my own trials and tribulations, and realized very quickly that religion isn't God, that God in your relationship is different than having religion. And people have had different opinions about religion and all that kind of stuff. But what it comes down to is your direct relationship with God is just you and him alone. And that can resurface at many different times, right? Yeah. Go ahead.
And that doesn't mean you don't need fellowship.
Like, sure, absolutely. Community. Yes.
Fellowship. Yeah. But there's a lot of people that have been church hurt, but they weren't God hurt.
That's right.
You were church hurt.
That's right.
And so like there's a distinction. And
yes.
I think that's important for people to hear.
That's why I brought it up, because I think that if that happens to you when you're a kid, there's no discernment there. You can't tell the difference. Right. Yeah. And so I want to unpack just a couple of things that you said, because one of the things that you talked about was like the hustle and the grind when you first got started, and you had these habits, but you had like a 5%er habit, or you had like a 1%er habit. Like, let's be honest, right? Not everyone's going to grind through that. Go for No was the first book that I read. I sent 100 to 150 messages a day. I got the results. People were like, how did you create $100,000 business in a year with no experience? Well, I did the work. That's what I did. Right. And so it was really interesting to hear your story, because really you're just 2 steps ahead of everybody else. And that's what I've watched you do with Faith Over Fear, and creating and evolving into this new brand, because you're being led that way. And what I see out there in the marketplace is a lot of people doing the same thing over and over and over again, or doubling down on the stuff that was working for them 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and they're going to be known for this thing. But I think that people like us that are impact driven, that truly care about other humans and serving them at our greatest ability, is that we have to listen to our conversations with God. We have to listen to our intuition when we're told to do certain things. And we evolve through that process to serve people where they are right now, because the world has changed over the last couple of years. And we can argue that it's biblical. We can, that it's a piece of what's unfolding in front of us. I think a lot of people are stepping into their faith, right? Are stepping into their faith right now because they see that it's necessary, that there's this need for peace and love and compassion that seems to not be there right now. And so talk to me a little bit about how you've evolved Rank Makers Live into, and last year it was more of a business summit. I love that you had Dr. Joe Dispenza there, and Russell Brunson. You had a lot of really big names. You're serving people at a really high level, but we've evolved now into Faith Over Fear, because this is such a prevalent piece of your life, and you've done the work. Look, like over the last year, I've seen you study the Bible and really not just like read it, but like dig into it and understand it, so that you're able to relate that. And I remember my husband bringing one of Jordan Peterson's lectures to me, because he took the Bible and put it into everyday regular life, right? Because sometimes it's hard to decipher. And I remember thinking of it differently. I'm like, man, I didn't realize there was so much good stuff in here. I should really pick this up again. So, can you talk a little bit about that, how you're evolving into this Faith Over Fear, because it's what's needed right now?
Yeah. So, and first of all, our Faith Over Fear Business Summit is September 7th through 9th in Orlando, Florida. And it used to be formerly known as Rank Makers Live. And Rank Makers is our membership. We have, around 10,000 people in there. And I do a Monday through Friday, I do a short video for them with training, action steps, and a couple of different things, and we have fun with them. And so I do want to make it clear, it is a business summit. It's not a revival. It's not worship music for 8 hours a day. Right? Okay. So I haven't turned into a charismatic. I'm not going to be performing miracles or anything. It is a business summit. So I've invited some of my very most respected rock stars that I know to come on there with a little bit of a twist. I say, okay, I want you to teach what's working for you right now. What is working on social media? What's working in branding? What's working in sales and marketing? But I also want to unchain you and say, if share how faith impacts your business and your growth and your mindset. Now, some of these, some of these speakers haven't been, given that green light before. And some of these speakers are, I gotta be careful saying this, but let's just say there are some companies out there that you're not even allowed to say God by itself. You have to say God and source, God and universe, or God and, whatever, or you're not even allowed to say God. And so I'm unchaining them, and not that all of them are chained, just to be clear. And so they're going to share, like, how does faith, here's what's working in my business, because my, this concept that was, I'm very grateful was, given to me, is for you to build a thriving business that allows you to accomplish all the things you have in your heart to make an impact, to go out there and shine a brilliant light for the kingdom. And so the key is to understand, and we're going to really be hammering this message, is it's okay for you to have a lot of money. It's not okay for a lot of money to have you. And so for most of my life, I had, my self-worth was associated with my net worth, right? Yep. So my identity was my circumstances. And so, like, money was my identity, significance, status, safety, security. And that's where a lot of people are. If they got a lot of money, they may feel a little bit better, but they always want more. And if they don't have money, they're depressed, right? So it does affect their identity. That means they're leaning on it, and that is a form of worship, actually. So if you trust in God, the source, and understand that money is a resource, that's a different story. Now I got resources, which are his resources. How do you want me to use them? So I want more people to have more resources and teach them what to do there, but not to fall into the trap of this never-ending hamster wheel of, I'm not enough, I got to earn more acceptance, and let me hustle, grind, until I'm fall over, right? And so instead, it's put your trust in God, let him light your path and guide your ways, and do it. And so I have some really, there's one major speaker. I think we're wrapping up today. It'll be the biggest speaker I've ever had. And so I can't mention him just yet, because
come on.
I can't. We're finalizing today. But I will tell you one interesting one that a lot of our audience may not know, and that's my good friend Pastor Baker out of Ohio. He did an 18-part, he was called to do an 18-part series to his congregation on God and money. And at the end of the 18 series, over 25% of his congregation had become debt-free. Now, where do you hear that? Nowhere.
Wow. Never.
Never, right? And I'm actually studying his 18-part series, because I want to know what did he do, right? Like, what did he teach? And, and there's just so much, and he is so biblically sound, because a lot of people, they think that there's some virtue in poverty, or that, that you're supposed to be broke. And, he does a great job of pointing out how the Bible tells us that it's actually selfish for you to be broke. It's selfish for you to only want to provide for you and your family. That means, to heck with everyone else, right?
Yeah.
And why are we instructed to give to the poor if there's virtue in poverty? Wouldn't we ruin their spirituality? Right. So, let me not blow that for you, brother. You're looking real spiritual right now. I'm pretty hungry. No, but you're spiritual, right? Like, that makes no sense. And so people struggle with that. So this is the latest, greatest business strategies and tactics, of course, and also how faith plays a role with these rock stars, and as well as myself and my wife.
Wow. It's so interesting. I think that there's this moment, and I recognized it. It was 8 years ago. I was on a cruise with this. It was a business cruise. It was a mastermind, but of course we're on a cruise. And so I go, and what I recognized is that I had fallen away from talking to God regularly. I'd fallen away from that relationship. And when I went to this retreat, these women that had faith had unshakable faith in what they were doing. They had unshakable faith. And it made me realize right then and there, it's because it's not up to them, it's up to God. And so if it's on you, then you have all this pressure and all these things are going to happen. Like, oh my God, you worry about everything, right? But when you give it to God and you say, hey, and by the way, I don't talk like this a lot on social media. I don't talk like this a lot in my video. I don't talk about my relationship with God, that's not something that we're used to, right? Like, it's usually a private thing. But I think that it's important for people to realize that when you hinge your success or hinge the things that you want on you and don't let go and give to God, that there's this different stress in your life. There's that always need for more. Like you said, there's this need for more. That faith, when you have unshakable faith, it takes that anxiety, that worry, that everything away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
a couple things there. Yeah, we want to make ourselves the savior. We want to be the hero. We want to have the trophy. We're not. We're saved through grace, not by what we do. And so most people I found, they don't understand what the word faith actually means. Faith is spelled R-I-S-K. Faith is I'm moving in a direction and I don't know how it's going to go, but I trust you, Lord. And so faith has had me make some really interesting decisions here recently of, I won't get into it, but it's, just faith, right? Hey, I don't know how this is going to go, God, but I'm sure you're sending me here for a reason. I'm going to go. I'm going to have this conversation. I mean, he's prompted me to pray for strangers, which is very much outside my comfort zone. But I remember we were in the Bahamas and we were at this restaurant and this one of the ladies that worked there, she was walking down the stairs and I got pray for her. And I'm like, really? You want me to pray like this? And so I go up to her. I'm like, this may sound weird, but can I pray for you? And she goes, absolutely. I'm a Christian. I'm like, oh, okay. What's funny though, is he's had me do that with a bunch of different people. And anytime I've gotten the prompting, not my own prompting, because I didn't want to do it, but anytime I've gotten the prompting, they've all received it so wonderfully. And I'll tell you, I think hopefully we have time, but I'll tell you one of them that was very meaningful to me. And that was, there was a guy working at our house and I just got, you need to pray with him. And I'm like, oh, man. And so I prayed on, I'm like, really? You want to pray? And so, I really delayed it. And, but then I'm like, okay, fine. And so I go up to him and I said, hey, this may sound weird. I'm newly Christian, but can I pray for you? And he goes, absolutely. He said the same thing. He's like, absolutely. And so we pray. And afterwards he goes, man, I really appreciate that, and he tells me this amazing story. 30 years ago, he broke his neck and back and he was in a 6-week coma. And in that coma, he has this dream and he's like going down the road on his motorcycle. And, he told me, he goes, I was a bad dude, man. Like I did bad things. I was a bad guy, did a lot of bad things. And he said in this, coma dream, he sees a Grim Reaper kind of person and a little girl dressed in white that said, hey, take my hand, it'll be okay. And so he touches the hand of the little girl in white. And he immediately wakes up out of his coma and there's, people around him and everything. And he said, ever since that day, I've tried to be a better person. And that just, usually when I tell a story, I start crying, but that was a wonderful gift that I only got from being obedient.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, there's one more thing that came up while I was telling this that I didn't want to share, but I asked God, what do I need to forgive myself of? And instantly this memory popped up that I hadn't thought about in years. And it was when Jess and I were dating. We weren't engaged, weren't married. We were dating. We were, at like a function, and it was very weird kind of scenario. And we were all wasted, and I didn't make the right decision. Let's just say that. And so I hadn't thought about it in years. Like, oh man, yeah, please forgive me of that. That was bad stuff. The next day, that memory kept hammering me, and I'm like, man, I thought you forgave me. Tell your wife. I'm like, what? God told me, tell your wife. And so, if God's telling you eat the donut, I'm going to question if that's from God. Okay. If he's telling you to, finish the submarine sandwich, I'm going to question, is that really from God? But if he tells you to do something you absolutely don't want to do, there's a chance. Right. And so he says, tell your wife. And so I pray on it again. I pray on it again. And again, faith is R-I-S-K. This is literally the riskiest conversation I could have ever had in my entire life.
Sure.
And so I go to my wife and I say, hey, I got to tell you something. And first of all, I'm very sorry, nothing like this has ever happened again. We were all wasted. And for some reason, we had this girl stay in our hotel room. Like, why would we do this? This was whatever, 15 years ago, 17 years ago, something like that. And I just want to say, I'm so sorry. Obviously that nothing like that has ever happened again. I would never do it again. But I'm supposed to tell you this. And she, of course, is very upset. She cries. She goes away for the day. I'm like, well, God, I'm really trusting you here. Who knows, how this is going to go down. She came back and she said, what's weird is I trust you now more than ever. You didn't have to tell me that. And you got away with it. And it's been a million years. But I trust you more now than ever. I now believe that the enemy would have used that situation to break us apart.
Eventually.
Because if he finds out from me versus someone else, that's a very different situation. And so I can tell you, if you really start walking your faith, you and the people around you are going to be attacked. I'm just telling you, I'm warning you. So you got to really buckle up. I've had a lot of attacks. I've had financial attacks. I've had physical attacks. I've had spiritual attacks. I've had all kinds of attacks in me and all around me. And that is what's going to happen the closer you draw to God. And you just need to strengthen your feeble arms and your weak knees, as we're instructed in Hebrews 12. And you need to be prepared for that. But it will strengthen you. It will make you someone you never thought you could be.
I'm like trying not to cry, just telling you right now,
Yeah.
because I feel that so deeply. I've had many conversations with our friend Jenny Potter about things like this, and it's really interesting because when you decide to step into that role and really be obedient, I feel that friends, people that you've known for a long time start to fall away. Yeah. And it's like climbing that second mountain again and just having that trust, having that faith, having that risk of like, I'm going to go there. And when you wholeheartedly commit to that, you will be under attack. People will say things to you. People will try and hurt you. They'll try and hurt your family. They'll do those things. And I remember coming to you, I remember going to Jenny, I remember going to a couple of my other friends and saying, what do you do when this happens, when you get all this heat? You're like, you ignore it. You know where they're at. You know where their head's at. You just keep moving forward. And although it's easy to say those things, we still have to work through them as human beings. And one of the things that I know is that when you do the work, when you face some of the hardest work of your life, which is your personal work, when you do that work, there is a group of human beings that is standing at the top of that mountain, waiting to receive you, waiting to cheer for you, to hold your hand and say, you made it, you did it too, keep going. And that if you have that faith and that you are willing to risk it all for it, you will be paid in a beautiful way by finding your community of people that support you. And it does bring it all back to community, right? It brings it all back to people that are on the same mission and creating that impact in their way. Just like I love that you said, I wasn't going to go, I was told not to go into ministry. I was told to work with business people that continue to build and build with faith, right? Knowing that we've made some really big decisions and I know the people that I can help right now. I know the people that we're meant to help because we're living the life that they want to live. And you just have to be 2 steps ahead and be the person that is diligently working on yourself before working on everything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Amen.
So thank you so much.
Yeah. There's a great script verse I recently came across. I could roughly quote it, but I'll quote it exactly. But it's 1 Peter 4:10, and that is, as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. And so, what that is my mantra: help the person you used to be. We've each been giving gifts. Those things that you survived, those things that you overcame, those things that you were brought through and came out on the other side, those are actually gifts. And I know that may be hard to imagine. And some of them are just so, just crazy to even think about any kind of gifting. But you now possess the seed within you to go and help the person going through the same thing. Yeah. And so, it's like I wouldn't take away my child abuse. It's not like I would wish it upon anyone. I wouldn't, right? But I wouldn't take away my child abuse because that gave me the keys to doors I otherwise couldn't get in. It's how I'm able to speak to troubled teenagers or kids in foster care or people who've been through trauma. And so what if I didn't have that? I don't know who I would be. What would that look like? It's such a meaningful part of my life.
Yeah.
I don't know who I would be. So I'm very grateful that happened. Like Joseph, who says to his brothers when he finally reveals himself, he says, I think it's Genesis 45, I think. He says, hey, it wasn't you that sent me here, because they sold him into slavery. It wasn't you that sent me here. It was God, because God wanted me to actually save y'all during this famine. Like that, that's just so powerful to embrace. If you can just embrace the things that you've been through, there was a reason for them, as hard as they were.
And it will come around, right? In different conversations, it'll come around. You know, I'm reminded, a few weeks ago, was speaking to my 94-year-old grandmother. And my family, I've like kind of always been a black sheep in my family, and always been entrepreneurial, always like, they don't understand where I get my energy or my drive from. They're just like, okay, Christina's off doing something else now. You know, and so my grandma and I had this really heartfelt conversation, and she said, and we talked about God. You know, she had a little bit of a health scare, and so she was doing a lot more praying those days and looking, you know, deep diving into it. And she said, I finally get it, Christina. And I said, I'm glad you do. The voice that I have, that calling that I have inside of me, that's the voice of the Holy Spirit. It is guiding me every single day. It is pushing me to do more. It would be easy for me to sit down and go drink margaritas at the beach every day. Like, let me tell you, that would be so easy. Yeah. But every day I get up with purpose. Every day I get up and I'm like, how can I help these people move through? How can I serve at a higher level? How can I be better for my family, for my husband? How can I be better for the community here? And so that voice of the Holy Spirit, many people, I feel like humans, we ignore that voice so often. And for me, I don't know about you, but well, obviously with you, it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger as times get harder. And it's really interesting to see that happen with so many people. It's empowering, it's enlightening. It's, you know, it brings me a lot of joy to see you show up and serve people in this way. And I just want to tell you, I'm so proud of you. And I'm encouraging anyone and everyone that can get to Orlando for Rake Makers, or how you can say Rake Makers, for Faith Over Fear, for Faith Over Fear, from September 5th to 7th, right?
Close, 7th to 9th.
7th to 9th. Lord, I'm just going to let you say it, okay?
Yeah, Faith Over Fear Business Summit, Orlando, Florida, September 7th through 9th. We just opened up, like literally yesterday, we just opened up general admission tickets, and they're $97. So it's,
oh, dude,
silly. It's just
come on.
3 days, and check out the speakers. We literally have the best speakers in the world. I mean, they're incredible. And we haven't even, there's several we haven't even announced, and one really major one that we're about to announce hopefully soon, hopefully today. And so it's going to be awesome. And you know that you're not in faith if you're in situations in your life that you don't like, but you're not addressing. If you're in relationships that you don't like and you're not willing to have the tough conversations, you live in fear. And your fear is that this is the best I can do. I don't want to blow it. It would have been easy for me not to talk to my wife. But the fact that I did, that faith, that leap, that risk, actually created an even better relationship than I could have ever imagined.
I've definitely seen you guys grow together, and I love watching her in the real estate market. Like, she's thriving. It is like, she looks, by the way, when I see Jess, she's like glowing. You know, like, she's like constantly glowing. She's in her wheelhouse, and I love how she serves people. So I just want to congratulate you guys for building a beautiful life with you and your family, and serving people, constantly serving people at your highest level, and not being scared to go after that. So thank you so much for being here today, Ray. I really appreciate you.
Yeah. And kudos to you too. You've been going after it too. That's for sure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll talk again soon. You guys make sure you get tickets, $97. Like, get down there and have some fun. Okay. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.